Good afternoon. Yeah, thank you for being here, and thank you, Dean Skip Rosendorf, for inviting me to the school speak with you today. And I've been to quite a few universities in the U.S., since as ambassador, and but being here is kind of special for me. Why? Because first, that President Clinton, he's a visionary leader, that he's the one to decide the normalization of relations with Vietnam in 1995. And he was also the first U.S. president to visit Vietnam after the war in 2000. And as Dean just mentioned, I was a Fulbright student in the 90s, and being back here as the hometown of both President Clinton and also Senator Fulbright, and so it's very special for me. So it's a great honor and a privilege for me to speak with you today at the Clinton School of Public Service. So, talking about I think that being at the Clinton School, it's relevant for me to talk about the bilateral relationship between Vietnam and the United States. And when you're talking about the bilateral relationship, as you just see here in the, on the slideshows here, President Clinton made the very first visit to Vietnam in 2000, and you see how the Vietnamese people, especially the young, many students are greeted him, even during the during midnight when he arrived. So, but the relationship between the two countries has a long history. I just want to share with you some of the pictures showing the early engagement between our two countries. In July 1787, Thomas Jefferson, who was by that time minister, U.S. minister to France, just U.S. ambassador like me to France, he had a vision, and he had one to acquire rice from Vietnam. And in his own words, the dry rice of Cochin China has the reputation of being whitest to the eyes, best flavor to the taste, and most productive. And I will endeavor to procure some of the to be brought from Cochin China. So from France, he tried to acquire rice to the United States, a seed to grow rice here and then to export to France. So, and as you see also on the picture, that's the day we proclaimed independence, September 2nd, 1945. And you can see on the pictures, the Vietnamese people, joy, happiness, on the days of Declaration of Independence. And we also see the American friends being side by side with us on the same day. Their faces also beaming with joy, like the Vietnamese people. Next slide. Not that, that's okay. And as we declared independence on the 2nd of September, and 20 days later, 22nd of September, President Ho Chi Minh sent a telegram to President Truman expressing Vietnam's desire to have friendship and relationship with the United States. You can see the letter back, very simple typewriting, which if you do it like this now, if my staff would put this one to me, I would have to ask them to redo it. But anyway, it's very, very unique history. And just 2 months after that, in November, the President Ho Chi Minh again, who was by that time also the first foreign minister of Vietnam, sent a letter to the Secretary of State expressing the desire to send to the U.S. a delegation of about 50 youths to study in the United States. So right after independence, the President of Vietnam wants to send the Vietnamese youths to United States to study. And now you know how the number of Vietnamese students now in the United States. 2012, it is about 15.5 thousand Vietnamese students now. We are now number one among ASEAN countries in sending students. More Vietnamese students in all universities throughout the United States than Indonesian, Malaysian, Singaporean, or Philippines students in the United States. And we rank number 8 among all countries in the world sending students here. And when President of Vietnam, Trương Tân Sang, met with Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State, last year, he expressed the desire to send more students to the U.S., and we are working on that. Just a few pictures of the history of relationship that we want to extend, want to have relationship with the United States since very early day of independence. Now, since the normalization of relations between the two countries in 1995, relations have been developing very, very fast. And in Secretary Clinton's words, that you just can't imagine that fast development just a few years ago. About now the relationship between U.S. and Vietnam, I can describe it as a very comprehensive about political and diplomatic milestones. I just want to share with you. Normalized in 1995, 2000, President Bill Clinton made the first visit to Vietnam, and since 2000 now, we have established about 9 dialogue mechanisms on all kinds of issues: trade, labor, political, security, defense, science, technology, education, and etc. And 2005, the Prime Minister of Vietnam visited the United States. 2006, President George Bush visited Vietnam. As the Dean just mentioned during his kind introduction about me, when I was back home, I was Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs in charge of, by that time I was in charge of our relations with European countries, about 52 countries. And then I remember when I visited Sweden, and I met with the Secretary, the Foreign Minister of Sweden, and he asked me, how is your relationship, Vietnam relationship with the United States? So I just mentioned about, President Clinton was in Vietnam, President Bush was in Vietnam. So he said, no, you don't need to tell me anymore, because, relationship between Sweden and the United States is very, very close relationship, but never a U.S. president visit Sweden. So since only in 5 years, 2 U.S. presidents visit Vietnam. So I know how relationships are developing now. So the President of Vietnam in 2007 also visited Vietnam, U.S., and 2008, 2010, our Prime Minister Nguyen Quoc Cuong also visited the United States. So just to show you, how frequent exchanges of visits at the top level between the two countries. In 2012 alone, we see the Defense Secretary Panetta in Vietnam. I just met him a few days ago. He said it was one of the most wonderful foreign trip for him. I met him in the Pentagon just 2 days ago. And Secretary Clinton, she visited Vietnam in July, and it was her third visit to Vietnam in 4 years, during the Obama administration. And the Ambassador Ron Kirk, the USTR, also visited Vietnam this year. So we see the frequent exchanges of visits. And About trade investment, if after 15 years of normalization, bilateral trade grew from $220 million in 1994 to $21.5 billion in 2011. And Vietnam's imports from US is growing by 20% annually. And especially about the agriculture products, you see a big increase from US agriculture products to Vietnam. So when I met President Obama last year, I told him that, Mr. President, I understand that you have put Vietnam as one of the 12 target countries for your NEI, the National Export Initiative, to double US exports in 5 years. And I told him that I assure you, Mr. President, with Vietnam, you will surely achieve your goal, given the increase by 20% to 25% annually. And since 2010, the United States has become the #1 exporter of animal feeds and agricultural products to Vietnam. And another factor, very important one, is that in 2010, Vietnam decided to join the TPP negotiations, the Trans-Pacific Economic Partnership. Now, 8 countries are negotiating with the United States about TTP. And it's, by that time I was back in Vietnam. And I was also curious why the United States is trying to persuade the Vietnam to join TPP negotiations. And when I was here, I met with Ambassador Ron Kirk, the USTR trade representative, and he did say that, one of the major decisions one of the major factors that led the United States to decide finally to join TPP because Vietnam is considering joining TPP. So now 8 countries, TPP partners of the United States, countries like Singapore, Chile, Peru, Brunei, Australia, New Zealand, and now Malaysia and Vietnam. Together combined, we are number 3 trading partner of the United States already. And once TPP is concluded, we can see a huge potential for further trade and economic relations between Vietnam and the United States. I met quite a few US business in Washington, D.C. and also in other states that I visit. And they are also very curious, about the potentials for further business in Vietnam. I met the Vice President of Nike, and he told me about 40% of Nike sports shoes are now made in Vietnam. And when they bring their shoes back to Vietnam, they are subject to about 35 to 40% tariff rate. And once TPP concluded, tariff rate reduced to 0, you can see huge benefits for Nike. And I think the same situation for other industries, businesses in the United States, and also for Arkansas businesses as well. Now, talking to another issue, I see some big corporations, U.S. already present in Vietnam, in all sector. You can see also the Pizza Hut, KFC already in Vietnam, and the youths, the young people in Vietnam also love it. My son, he preferred to go to KFC other than, stay at home and eating with parents. It's true. And now on the security and defense side, 2000 Defense Secretary William Cohen visited Vietnam, and 2003 we see the U.S. naval ship first visit to Vietnam. So our defense minister by that time, Vietnam was visiting the United States in 2003 and 2009. And this year, Secretary Panetta was just in Vietnam, I mentioned. His very nice picture at Cam Ranh Bay in June 2012. So, and we have already established, signed an MOU on defense cooperation between the United States in last year when I was there. So that's just a few aspects of the bilateral relationship between Vietnam and the United States. There are other aspects, education as mentioned, science, technology, and so on. But I would be stopped here. And I'm very optimistic about the bilateral relations, in the future. Because why? First, because Vietnam, we have, as you look at the map here, we have in terms of size, Vietnam is about less than 3 times bigger than Arkansas. But in terms of population, we are 30 times bigger than Arkansas. And when I met with Governor Arkansas this morning, I told him, Mr. Governor, in every 3 years, we have an additional population of Arkansas. So 90 million people now. Every year we have 1 more million. And I met some of my friends, good American friends here. They came to see me at the airport. So where's the ambassador? So we talked about, but he didn't know that I was ambassador. I am ambassador. So I thought the ambassador should be, look older, something like this. But I told him, no, I represent 90% of the population of Vietnam, under 60 years of age, 90%. And 55% is under 35 years of age. So very, and we started our reforms. We call it our reform since 1986. For the past 25 years, since 1986, our GDP growth rate is always has been always between 7 to 8% annually. The past 2 years, because of some worldwide economic slowdown, so our GDP growth rate also slowed down about between 5 to 6%. This year, about 5.2%. We see some difficulties and challenges, small challenges, but we are entering the second phase of reforms, further integration into the world, and that's why more opportunities for bilateral relations between U.S. and Vietnam, as I mentioned earlier in my remarks. So, and the second reason, I think that the U.S. is now rebalancing towards Asia-Pacific region, and all the regions. Secretary Clinton, President Obama, and all the U.S. high-ranking officials mentioned about the reasons why the U.S. is rebalancing towards East Asia. Vietnam, we welcome the rebalancing, and we look forward to further enhancing the relationship between with the United States in the rebalancing, the pivot policy. But when we talk about the bilateral relationship, I think that it's short-sighted to just talk about bilateral relationship itself, but we should have a broader view, an overview of the bilateral relationship in the regional context. And now the Asia-Pacific, as you see it, is the most dynamic region in the world. 50% of the world's population, 50% of the Earth's surface, 2/3 of the percent of the world's foreign reserve, and 30% of the world's export. So the rapid change in Asia-Pacific, more free trade agreements. And when I met U.S. business people, I often say that, if in 2000, there were about 4 to 5 FTAs in the Asia-Pacific region. 2010, 10 years later, is about 84 FTAs in the region. And under about 50 other FTAs are under negotiations. But the United States is party just a few of those FTAs. And also a very, very, I don't say that interesting, but it's worth considering. Fact is that, for the first time in history, the United States, many countries in the region have the United States as strategic partners or allies, but the United States is no longer #1 trading partner of those countries. Just recent data that if in 2006, just 5 years, 2006, the United States is #1 or a bigger trading partner of 126 countries, while China about 76 countries. Now 5 years later, 2011, the numbers just roughly the same, but the role is different. China now is #1 trading partner of 124 countries, while US about, I don't remember exactly, about 70 or 74 countries only. So if you see here also about talking about the trade issues, now we are ASEAN, we just have the concrete agreement on the regional comprehensive economic partnership with Japan, China, Korea, and Australia, New Zealand, but without US. But US, so they just put up, and we welcome it, that the initiative, we call it the E3s, expanded economic engagement. When we meet with US officials, we say that we welcome US rebalancing. But for us, we see countries in the region, we see it should be a comprehensive rebalancing. Political, security, defense is very important part, but not all. And for long-term US long-term interest in the region, it should be economic, business more. And that's why I'm very glad to see Secretary Clinton's talking more and more now in the recent days about the economic statecraft and more economic focus on the region. And now talking about another issue, next picture, about the evolving regional architecture in the region. You see here is somewhat confused. We have a map about all kinds of, not all, but almost all kinds of regional architectures in Asia Pacific. And you see Vietnam is part of all these kinds of, almost all of these kinds of architectures. And we can be a partner of the United States in all those kinds. The East Asia Summit, very important. Vietnam, the United States decided to join the East Asia Summit in 2010 when Vietnam was chair of ASEAN. Yes, in 2010. And as one of the President Clinton's special assistant said that the #1 the trademark footprint of the U.S. foreign policy during the Obama first administration, first term, it's about the rebalancing. And the most important one was the U.S. decision to join East Asia Summit. And Vietnam play a very important role in letting the U.S. being admitted as member of the EAS. And ASEAN also, and APEC, Lower Mekong Initiative, so all these kinds of, so Vietnam can be a partner, and we are increasing the cooperation between the U.S., not only bilaterally, but regionally, and on all those kind of regional architectures. So now talking about some challenges in the region, security challenges. You see the Korean Peninsula right now, South China Sea, which we call the East Sea issues, tsunami, the natural disasters, also the East China Sea issue. So the U.S. is now paying more attention, and we welcome any U.S. contribution to peace and development stability in the region as well. So with that, I would stop here, and it's open for the questions.
Please raise your hand, and we'll get just wait. We'll get the microphone to you. We have a question in the back. Yeah, John.
Thank you so much for coming, Ambassador, and thank you for mentioning the economic reforms in the last few years and since '86. My question is, what do you see as the impact on Vietnam of the political and economic reforms in Burma, and will this prompt or stimulate Vietnam to make further reforms?
I think that first about talking about Myanmar, which some now is still mixed name, Burma or Myanmar. And I also noticed the President Obama sometimes say Burma, and sometimes he said Myanmar. And Myanmar is a member of ASEAN, 10 ASEAN countries. And we welcome, and we are very glad to see the developments in Myanmar. We welcome that. I understand the difficult time when Myanmar is closed up, and during the tsunami time in 2007 something, when international countries, when foreign countries or international aid assistance, they want to donate and assist the Myanmar people to overcome the consequences of the tsunami, and the Myanmar authorities just refused. They didn't accept anything. And we had to convene a very special meeting among ASEAN countries, try to persuade Myanmar to accept the foreign donations, foreign assistance. And we welcome that. And of course, I think that given the Myanmar role increased in the region, I think that's good for the whole region.
Thank you for coming today. My question is on education. You mentioned there's about 11,500 Vietnamese students who are
15,000.
15,000. And there's a proposal over here that allowing some of the foreign students to stay if they decide to stay after they graduate. What is your position on that with regards to the Vietnamese students who are attending colleges and university over here?
Yes. Thank you for the question about the education thing. I think that is one of my priority during my term as ambassador here is to promote further cooperation on education and science technology things as well. Whenever I visit about 20 states in the United States, whenever I go, I try to reach out with the students in Vietnam. And they are all brilliant, young PhD, postdocs, 20, 30 years of age, very confident, very dynamic. And I'm really happy. I remember I visited the University of Wisconsin just 3 months ago. And about 100 Vietnamese students came to see me and asked, who among you are on the dean's list? And more than half of them are on the dean's list. So it's very, 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 very proud. And I remember when I was back in Vietnam, I once attended a meeting between the President of Vietnam and the President of Korea. And the President of Korea, not the current one, the former, but by that time he was president, he told the President of Vietnam that, a couple of years ago, when I went to the United States, I was always proud because the Korean students are always the best. But now, the Vietnamese students are overpassing the Korean students to be the best students in the United States, foreign students. And I just went to Intel, have a meeting with Intel Vietnam. They just got the prize from the Secretary Clinton for their cooperation, for their business in Vietnam, also for their corporate responsibility. And a group of Vietnamese students from Intel here, a couple of months, they took a competition and they won the first prize, even among all the MIT students, but the Vietnamese students got the first prize. So it's very, very, very interesting. And when I meet, the student ask me the same question. What if after study, I stay here? So I tell them, as ambassador, very frankly, I encourage you to be back home. Vietnam needs you. But if you decide to stay, no problem. You can stay, you can work here, you learn more experience. And even from here, you can contribute your knowledge, and you can work with home. So no problem for you. But the most important thing, you as students or any Vietnamese, you should abide by the law of the United States, regulations. If you are allowed, if you stay here illegally, you got the job here, you are welcome, and we encourage you.
Jesse, we have a question back here. Yes.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Nguyen, for coming and visiting us at the Clinton School and speaking. You highlighted some of the free trade agreements that Vietnam is a part of for economic reform. I wanted to ask you in particular about the Trans-Pacific Trade Agreement and how your government feels that it might enhance domestic reform on labor in the country.
About the Trans-Pacific Partnership, now the negotiations are underway. Usually that if negotiations are underway, I'm not allowed, and even I don't know all the details of the negotiations, and I'm not allowed to speak it publicly. But anyway, I would like to share with you a few. Out of 29 chapters of TPP negotiations now, 29 chapters, Vietnam is particularly interested in just one. That's the market access. Vietnam is ready to open further Vietnam markets to TPP partner to the United States, but we want to have a shared market access to the United States as well. And especially in the talking market access, our number one item would be the apparel, clothing, textile. And so far, negotiations still underway. So negotiations give and takes. So it needs some time, but I can't tell all the details of negotiations right here. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. The microphone's coming.
We have meeting over here. I saw some Vietnamese are down there, and they have the human rights outside. They say that Vietnam, we don't have human rights. And I don't know why the Vietnamese, they don't have human rights, because some Vietnamese people, young people, they try to fight the China who invade Vietnam, and by the and the Vietnamese government put some young people, they fight for their country, fight with the China, and you know why Vietnamese don't have human rights. Do you think because that's the President Obama, last few weeks he went to Thailand and Cambodia and Burma, and he don't visit Vietnam. As you say, the trade, the Vietnam and U.S. have the close relationship, but I don't think it's right now.
Okay.
And so can you explain?
Can I ask you, are you originally from Vietnam?
Yeah, I'm Vietnamese.
Yeah.
But
how long have you been stay here?
I've been here since 1975.
1975.
Yeah.
Have you ever been back to Vietnam?
No.
Oh, it's pity.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes,
because,
thank you for the question. Yes, I think that you will see some people protesting, against me outside, and I've been to quite a few places, and sometimes I get that kind of demonstrations. But you see how many of them? 10, 20, 50, 100? And compared to the majority of the Vietnamese community in the United States, now we have about 4 million Vietnamese overseas. 2 million are in the United States, half of them. And many come back already, many. I've met so many people coming back, doing business, visiting relatives, and I think that you should be back to see the country by yourself. You know, you cannot have a picture of Vietnam in in the 70s or in the 80s and talk about Vietnam right now. We are moving forward. We are moving forward. Of course, when I talk with U.S. Officials here, so of course no one can say our country is perfect in human rights. We all need to improve. The United States needs to improve human rights record as well. Vietnam needs to. We need time, and not talking about the difference, no. And talking about the Vietnam-China relationship, I was working on Vietnam-China relationship for almost 20 years. As the Dean mentioned, I was posted to China. The relationship, when I was in China, relationship was not normalized. We had a very difficult time. I lived in Beijing, just like living in an island. Without communications back home, no letters, by that time no emails, home no phones. I was totally cut off communication with my kids, my wife from home, all that time. But we had to improve relationship, and it brings benefits to both countries, you know, China and Vietnam as well. And now, I remember when I was a young officer at the Foreign Ministry, I had to take part in a very important work, is returning the prisoners of war. We had a fight in 1978 border war with China, in early 1979, and we returned the prisoners of war. I remember we had to cross the border with only mines, just a very narrow path to cross. And I see people died, buffaloes died, all around. And now we have a peaceful land border with China. It took 30 years of negotiations to conclude the land border with China. 30 years. And we even calculate the days of negotiations, more than 1,000 days of negotiations, days and nights of negotiations, hard work. About 10,000 documents been signed, 10,000, 12,000 signatures on that. How hard work it is. And now when you visit back, if you have countries or relatives or friends near the border, they are very happy that because first time in history we have a peaceful, clearly demarcated border with China. In the past, skirmishes and people are not, you can do anything. You can grow crops, and then when time is to harvest, the Chinese came and they harvest it. Now everything is fine now. So it's hard work. Still, we have a issue with China, as I mentioned just about that, about the South China Sea issue. Yeah, we call it EC. But for me, I often say that yes, for sovereignty, it's a secret thing for all Vietnamese, inside, outside the country. But to settle it, how to settle it, we need a warm heart, talking about negotiations, but we need a cool mind, to be calm, to settle it. No way, we have to settle it diplomatically, peacefully, and under international law, under UNCLOS. And we are trying to persuade, together with other ASEAN countries, other claimants, and China, sit down with China to settle it peacefully. Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. We have a question right here.
Ambassador, I wanted to thank you for coming to see us in Arkansas. My question is a follow-up to the question that was asked earlier about labor. The world just witnessed a really terrible factory fire in Pakistan. And the United States, when it was industrializing, also had a history of industrial accidents and tragedy. So I'm wondering what kind of steps Vietnam is currently taking to protect its workers, and especially since textiles are one of the main industries in your country.
So I think that, yes, the workers are also the citizens of Vietnam. So the government has the responsibility to that, and especially about the safety, safety standards of all factories working in Vietnam. They have to meet the safety standards requirements in Vietnam. But frankly speaking, very truly, I don't know much about that. Ambassador is not supposed to know everything. So, but this responsibility of the government, I now acknowledge that. Yeah.
All right. Yes, sir. Do you have a question here?
Yeah.
Mr. Ambassador, in the United States, we're very proud of an independent judiciary, and I wondered if you would comment on the role of the judiciary in your country, and particularly its relationship to, I suppose, the executive portion of your government, please.
Can you repeat the question again? I can't hear very clearly. Sorry.
In the United States, we're very proud of an independent judiciary court system.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just wonder if you could comment on the role of the courts in your own government, how they relate to the executive functioning of your government, and what kind of protections perhaps you might have in place for those accused of crimes in your country.
Yeah. I can just say a few words very broadly that, we have now 3 priorities, in the years ahead until 2020. The first one is about human resource development. As I mentioned about the younger generation and more people and I think the people is the most important, for further development. Second, about infrastructure development. After 25 years of rapid development, now infrastructure is lagging behind. So Vietnam is like a huge construction site now, new airports, new railroads, new seaports, and so on. But the third point is very important about the reforms on our legal systems as well. So legal system reforms is underway, and it's very important. So one of the 3 priorities in Vietnam now. I met with Senator John McCain. He visited Vietnam earlier this year. A group of senators, Senator John McCain, Senator Lieberman, and Senator Whitehouse and Illinois. And I met Senator John McCain. I asked him, what's the most impression? He's been to Vietnam many times. And what's your most impressive, your most impression about Vietnam, biggest impression about Vietnam during the visit? So he said about the reforms in the National Assembly of Vietnam. He can never see, can't imagine how big reforms in Vietnam, the role of the National Assembly of Vietnam. So I think that what you are talking about, one of the 3 priorities of Vietnam, that we need to focus on our reforms in the years ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause to the ambassador.
Thank you. And I just talked with desire is that I would see more Vietnamese students in Arkansas University of Arkansas, and also in the school, Clinton School of Public Service. And I will discuss with you, Dean, more about how we can work out together on the issues. And I know that we had one student, Vietnamese students now, but she's now in Vietnam, and I want to see more students in Vietnam here. Thank you for coming, and thank you for attention. Thank you for all the questions.